Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Councilmember Schwer?
Here.
Councilmember Wong?
Here.
Councilmember Nordby?
Here.
Mayor Monge?
Here. Adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cole.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Schwiers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're cruising now.
Yeah, we're making up time. First topic, code compliance and fire inspections. The man of the hour.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, Council. Here to talk about our operations and answer any questions along the way. So feel free as I'm going on about things. I'm going to get lost in what we do. I laid out a little bit of kind of the highlights of some things. But again, I'm going to try and dig down as deep as I can to help you understand what we're doing. And again, if you have questions, let me know. So I'll get started if we're ready to go. All right. So right off the bat, just looking at code compliance and fire inspections as conducted within the fire department. So this year, now we have 2 full-time fire inspector / captain positions as their job descriptions provide. And we have 2 part-time code compliance firefighter positions. And actually, that's a typo there where it says 1 position open. We actually have 1 position filled and 1 in the process of that was just recently posted to fill. So that's what we have and are using for staff along this. Obviously, I didn't include myself, although I do help out as much. Probably the goal was to have me do less and less of the code compliance issues that I have been doing with the addition of the full-time position added back this year. But as you'll hear tonight, I still help out as needed with larger events. So just starting with fire inspector responsibilities, starting with rental housing. So in the city code, we have our rental housing chapter 155, and I attached it. I'm not going to go through it, but if you have any questions about it, I can definitely answer. I just more or less wanted to show that to you, provide that document so that you were aware that specifically is there, and that's what guides us. That was something that we worked with Soren and Campbell and Knutson in putting together and have over the years to update our ordinance and make sure that we're following the rules as we're allowed. So the main areas that we look at, obviously, the single-family, duplex, fourplex, and multifamily rentals. So basically, anything that's a rental property within the city. We have broken down the time period of when when their licenses are due or when they expire. So on January 1st of each year is when we start to work on and issue the fourplex and multifamily rental license applications. And actually, they go out much before that through OpenGov, which has been huge in helping with less paperwork and easier access for everyone. So a couple months before that goes out, and hopefully our multifamily people out there are on top of things and get those returned back to us. The next step is, depending on the cycle, every other year we do inspections of the property. And part of the reason that we schedule the multifamily and fourplex properties starting in January and end December 31st is typically those buildings are larger buildings that have a brick and mortar on the exterior, so we don't have as many exterior issues with those properties as we do when we're talking the single family and duplex. So Every other year, we do inspections of the multifamily units. On the fourplex, we're going into all 4 units of the fourplex and if they have a laundry room or any common areas, we're going in there too. With the multifamilies, whether it could be anything over 5, but typically they're range from 12 to 18 units within a building. So we start with going into 5, and if those units are well-maintained, then we issue the inspection report through them, because basically we're walking through with property management or property owners and pointing out to them deficiencies, if there are any. And at this point, because we've been doing this for so long, the larger multifamilies know what they need to be doing. So for the most part, they are being in good condition. So if we're going into units and we find units that are severe, then we'll just continue to go into more units. But typically, for a complex like Cedarview Commons that has 12 buildings, along with boiler room and laundry room, common areas, the exterior, other garage type areas, we spend about 2 days on site with the property owners and property management, just trying to take our time and go through the building and the units with them and taking notes, writing up the reports. Once it's completed, they come back and put together the report. They attach it to the OpenGov and send it back for them. Typically give them 30 days to fix the corrections as they're needed. If there's other things identified that are life safety that would need to be immediate, obviously we make them address those. But once they have corrected everything, they're supposed to let us know. We come back out, we do a reinspection on what failed and look at those, make sure that those have passed inspection, and right down to every last item on the inspection report to make sure that it's good. Once that's completed, again, come back and just complete the process for payment on their end. I guess I could have included our rental license fees as it relates to multifamily buildings, but typically we charge $150 for each building, and then for each unit that we go into is an additional $10. So depending on where it's at, we add it all up at the end of the day and submit them an invoice for the cost. Once they pay is when they get their rental license for completing that process. So that's kind of a large group, the multifamily process of how we go things. The single family and the duplex, those licenses begin on July 1st and go through June 30th. And again, we like to take the time in the summer to focus on exterior issues, because typically the single family and duplex homes are your typical houses that could have exterior property issues. You know, you could have siding or paint that's chipping and peeling, which is a huge concern, or even worse. So we look at the property as a whole. When we're doing rental licensing, we're looking at the exterior property and the interior property of the property, the garage, the yard as it relates to code compliance issues as well. So if, you know, there's garbage, debris, or an inoperable vehicle, those things are being addressed as well on the single family and duplex. Any questions regarding that? Otherwise, I'll kind of move on. You can always come back, but
Excuse me. Yeah, I'm curious. Thank you for your presentation so far. One question I have in regards to the housing piece is, what are some of the challenges that you find when you're working with the variety of housing sites?
For us, the larger multifamily units, for the most part, the majority of them within the city, we have a good working relationship with our inspectors. They email, they call each other directly on issues. There's people set in place typically in those, and they know what their roles are, and they know what the expectations are from us in the city. So those aren't typically our challenges. However, there have been other property maintenance of some smaller multifamily buildings where the property maintenance and the ownership aren't doing the right things, what need to be done. And just like anything else that you're going to hear tonight, when people, work together and know what needs to be done and complete things, that's great. But when they fail to correct things or respond, or a lot of times, especially in the winter, if we have complaints come in from tenants, a lot of times tenants will call us directly and be like, hey, I've been without heat for a couple days now. And our first question is always, okay, have you reached out to your property manager, the owner, or whoever, and have you talked to them? And if it's no, it's going to be, okay, you need to talk to them. But most of the time it's yes, and they haven't done anything. So then that's when we, step in to help them out. So for the most part, the multifamilies are good that way, but I think the challenges are for the single-family areas where people don't realize, especially the first time, if they're just getting into renting their property and not understanding, what is really involved. So the first time we do our initial inspection with them, we want to make sure that the property owner is there, and where we can walk through with them and talk to them about some of the things we may be requiring that aren't there. Why do we require, smoke detectors in an older home that have never had them before? And just try to give them some information on that. So I think that's the biggest issue, is where we have people that, want to be a property owner and a landlord, but maybe shouldn't be a property owner or a landlord because they don't take care of it. So we spend a lot of time and resources all around. It doesn't matter if it's on inspections or the code compliance side for those that fail to keep up with the requirements. We spend most of our time there. The fire certificate of compliance, that's in Chapter 91 of the code, and that really covers commercial properties. And I think I brought this up before, but previously when we went down to two of us into the fire department, 2 full-time staff instead of the 3, and just 1 inspector, at that point is when we decided that we're not going to be proactive on our commercial fire inspections because we didn't have the resources to be able to do that. We wanted to remain focused on life safety, and the rental housing was that area of life safety that we could make a difference in. So we focused on that. Now, when a business owner or somebody requested us to do an inspection for whatever reasons that they needed for their insurance or whatever, we were more than happy to assist and go out and do that. But as what we were doing previous, we were trying to go through businesses on a regular basis to make sure that, again, they were maintaining their properties and keeping things safe. And it also gives us an opportunity to do our pre-plans from the fire response standpoint, so we can take in their information, upload it into our CAD system so that we have documentation of who the property owner is, who we contact in the middle of the night if something happened, what kind of chemicals may be in the building, locations of utilities, all these factors that eventually, or well, I shouldn't say, once it's put into our CAD, which we have things there now, but a lot of it's 10, 12 years old. So when I'm out on a fire call and the address pops up, I can hit a button and I can see the pre-plan, and that information is right there for me, so I know where to send my people if something's going on and where to go or who I need to contact. So it's a really great thing. And so previous to that, we were doing a good job, and then 2019, we had to make a choice, and that's where we chose to go. So my goal is to eventually, hopefully by the end of this year and for sure by the early next year, is to get back into going back out to these properties that we really haven't been at for a long time, to just walk through again and do inspections and update our pre-plans and CADs. Any questions on that? Another area that we do is school inspections, and that's through the great Minnesota State Fire Code. We're one of 13 communities in the state of Minnesota that the state fire marshal allows us to do fire inspections, and that's predominantly because we have had a history of doing them ourselves, and we send our staffs and our inspectors through the required training. So besides going to the Fire Inspector 1 and 2 certifications, there's a module for school inspections that they have to go through, and then we just submit our reports to the state. The one thing we do differently than the state, and this is partially the reason why too, the state will come out once every 5 years and do other school districts where we're going into the schools once every year to address issues and be on top of things. So that's a good thing in my eyes, because a lot of times, just like most places and businesses, you run out of storage and things start getting blocked, whether they're exits or other things. So 5 years is a long time to address some issues. Group home daycares is another specific area that we look at. And again, those are requested from the state as needed, and require specific training on that as well that our folks have. Dangerous buildings is just another chapter within the code. However, that's done in conjunction with our building official. So if we have a property that's dilapidated or in severe deterioration, or there's something going on that we need to really be concerned about, typically I call our building official, Scott Qualley, and him and I or our inspectors will get out there to take a look at it and do a very thorough review to determine what next steps need to be done. And usually, if it's going to hit something where something needs to be done, it's going to be coming to action directed towards council for us to follow up on. So if we need to mark this building that we found to be dangerous, we're going to need a council resolution from you with our guidance, basically recommending that. Some of the other fire code issues that are minor that come through: fireworks, fuel tank removal, installations, fireworks displays, temporary membrane structures. So those large events where you may have a tent, those are all items within the fire code that require us to have a review on to make sure that things are being done properly, if you will. Along with those responsibilities, they're also working on code compliance issues. However, I will say most of the issues that the fire inspector are going to be dealing with may be much larger as on the scale than our part-time code compliance person or people would do. So they're dealing with if there's a complaint coming in with potentially, if it could be related to a larger rental property or a business, or a concern of garbage at a business, or just a larger event where our part-time staff are going to be handling more of the things that are related to single-family type issues. And then obviously fire and EMS response. So that's kind of, that is the bullet points of the fire inspector and kind of their duties. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll talk about code compliance. Yeah. So our code compliance, again, they're part-time staff. We do up to 24 hours a week for those positions. And like I stated, we have one right now, and she's been with us for a couple of years. And, it's definitely a job where you have to have the right mentality to deal with, because you're dealing with property owners. It's their home. And you're dealing with issues on their home, and that can be difficult sometimes when there are problems. But, we try to stick to the code and what we need to address and to talk to them about that. So they're dealing, again, the majority of what they're dealing with is code compliance issues. Typically, it's coming out of our what's called our International Property Maintenance Code book. And actually, this is the new one I just got today, and I got a little excited. I was kind of happy and clapping about it, but because I've been waiting for it for 4 or 5 months here. But this basically directs us to the requirements of what we're looking at on a property. So we've adopted this in our code. That's chapter 156 in our code book. So currently, we're using the 2012 one. This is the 2021 book. And really, there's just some changes as it relates to more or less the scope of requirements and applicability, and it really hasn't changed as far as codes as it relates to properties, and that we're finding more things to throw the little book at you. But it's a guide that helps us along. And the one thing that I am always telling our people is that and this can be, I've been taught by Soren's office as well over the years, we want to make sure that we're directing a problem that's in the code book, right? We're not making something up. We're not saying, oh, I don't like what's in your yard, it's tacky or whatever. That's not the case. That's not what we're doing. We're pulling actual codes from the International Property Maintenance Code. It's coming from our city code of ordinance. It's coming somewhere, and we're documenting what that problem is, and then we're trying to get a correction for that. So that's kind of the gist of the code compliance piece. I think there's a lot of, I'll get into kind of our notification of that in a minute here. But besides the code compliance piece, our staff, and most of the time it's the part-time staff that are doing the zoning inspections as it relates to the driveways, the fence, the signs, the sheds, the retaining walls, and the patios. So basically, that has already gone through the process of submitting a permit, and it's being reviewed by other staff, whether it be Brandy or WSB through zoning and approving it. We're just, once everything's been approved, passed, OpenGov basically kicks it over to us and lets us know that it's ready for inspection. And we're just basically looking at what's laid out in the plan, what's been approved, going out to the property and verifying what is completed was done to the plan and what had been requested. So the majority of the time, things are done correctly, but every once in a while, it's not, and that's when we need to, step in and address the issue, because if somebody's putting up a fence or whatever the case may be, and they do it incorrectly, and it's shown as passed inspection, then that property, file is gonna have that in there, and years down the road. So we're making sure that those things are being done as, once it gets kicked over to us. The other area is chicken and bees, and that's fairly more of a spring, summer, and early fall type thing. When people apply to have those, and they're doing the fire and EMS response. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll talk about how we notify about the issue. Exciting stuff, isn't it?
There's one thing I was gonna ask.
Yeah.
When somebody is renting a place out their home, and is there any regulations or any rule about if they live outside a certain
Oh, yes.
distance that they need to have a property management company or something like that?
Yes, so that is addressed in our ordinance, that if you're outside the 7-county metro area, I believe it is, they have to have a property management. They have to have a designated person as a property management. So they have to list somebody that's going to be responding either, if they're the owner, and let's say they're in Florida, they may still want to be notified and have us CC their property management. So each one's different, but if they don't live within the area, they do have to have a property manager on it. And that's one of the things we'll find as well, that they don't. And then we have to let them know. Because it relates to just making sure we have somebody that, again, if there's a problem out there for us, whether it's fire and EMS or some type of issue, or even as it relates to the tenant, that's somebody that they can go to but yes, we do require that. Notification of code compliance. So how do we find out about the issue? Majority of the things that come in are complaint driven. So there is online submission through OpenGov that will come to us. We also have phone lines where they're listed on the city website as well. So our code compliance line or the code tip lines where we'll take information. And then each fire inspector or part-time code compliance person also has their own phone line that they'll use to share that number with if they're dealing with somebody, so that they can communicate with them. And then obviously city staff observation, so that's whether could be public works or police or anyone that notifies us, even along with our own fire staff as well, that maybe I'll see something and I'll just let them know. But a lot of the times, what internal staff will do is just create an incident within the OpenGov module. So just type it in there, then it's filled out, and it goes right to our people, and they can deal with it from there. And it's basically tracking it as they go through the process. And then obviously proactive inspections on our part, going out and specifically looking for things. There hasn't, I would say we're not as proactive as we used to be, but that's partially because of the lack of staff. So moving into this summer, hopefully we'll be able to be a little bit more proactive in looking for some concerns and dealing with those. Yeah.
Is there any, like on the website where you could, our website, post the 5 biggest issues that people, so people can look at it and go, oh, I didn't realize that was an issue, or we got that out back we should think about? Is there anything we could put on there as a helpful tip for people so they're, do that?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. We have something like that. So one of the areas is, you know, and Carrie and I are talking constantly about how to make things more visible because, you know, with rental licensing and everything going through the fire department and some code compliance, even though on a page it will say code compliance and direct you where to go, if people don't look for that. But there is information out there, and it's just trying to get it visible where everybody can see it. Obviously, there's lots of information out there.
Be a good time to,
Yeah,
everybody take a good look at their yard when they're,
oh, definitely.
shows up.
So, as it relates to the busy time for code compliance, you know, spring and fall are busy times, definitely. Summer, if it'll slow down a little bit. And in winter, it's usually, the biggest things we're dealing with, and especially this winter, has been snow on sidewalks and making sure people are getting those done. And this last snowfall, there are so many people that just gave up. And I see it. And I struggled with the last day or two sending people out to spend time and notifying about it when it's going to be melted in a couple days. But, you know, there were a lot of people that went out and gave the effort, but there were a lot that didn't. And I get it, but it's difficult, especially when they're around schools and we have kids walking on the sidewalks to get to schools. So, you know, people get frustrated when we have to tell them to shovel their sidewalk or do a better job of shoveling their sidewalk, not just a little path, the entire sidewalk. So yeah, as it relates to the top things that we deal with, I mean, that's one of them, obviously. We're gonna get to it sometime here, I hope, where grass turns green and starts growing, but we always have that late spring push where things just grow like mad and it rains and people don't keep up with their grass and keeping it mowed. And again, that's an area that we continue to push on. And a lot of those notifications for that type of violation, you know, we want to be proactive on it right away. So we have, you know, a type of door hanger or something that we can leave on the property to just kind of be like, hey, let you know your grass is long, can't be over 6 inches, and we need to get it cut type thing. So
What about that, I don't mean to interrupt, though, what about that no mow some month, is that May? What do we do about that when people,
that's
May, how do?
going to be up to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we don't have, we haven't approved or have it in a resolution or anything to do no mow May. I know it's a good thing out there and a lot of communities are doing it, but I think you have to have the conversation and weigh those pros and cons to it as well. Yeah, that's a whole separate conversation. Yeah,
Saw 'em pop up in St. Paul, people had.
we have,
that I
we,
didn't know if
yep.
it was legal or not legal, so that's why I mentioned.
So from what I've seen, because we have in our code that says it can't be over 6 inches, so if we're doing no mow May, then we're gonna have to have something that says, well, during the month of May, we're gonna let you grow your grass as long as you want, and come June, whatever, you know, we're gonna start addressing the issue again.
You can bail it.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I've seen from other communities. They have to, through their council, approve it, so, yeah.
This rides on the coattails of John's question a little bit, but one of the things I was surprised was an outline, and I think we will all be supportive of, is actually creating a formal education piece to your plan. You know, not only, excuse me, sorry, not only like the top 5, but other ways that we can get the education out there
Yeah.
for those that, so the lack of compliance isn't through the ignorance.
Correct. I do like the idea and that throughout different times, going back, we've had different types of flyers. And I think we can definitely add that in as a learning component and probably do a much better job of notifying people about that. Yeah. And it's always, I can remember when we used to send out letters, or I'm sorry, notifications that would go out in the monthly bill. If it would be, hey, if your garbage cans are on the street, make sure you get them pulled back. Or if you see, we would talk about things in the newsletter that would go out monthly. And inevitably, the next couple days after that newsletter would go out, we would always get, phone calls regarding issues to go take a look at. So it definitely is good to have that information forefront. So I'll make a note, as to put something together on the learning access side of things to get out there to people to be aware of, especially coming in the springtime. I've already had individuals, call or come in to discuss, some things that they've been looking at this winter and don't want to look at this spring and summer. So, but the notification to the property owner, basically, how do we tell them? I mean, typically the first way we try to is face to face. So, but that's not always achievable, especially if they're not working or they're at work and not at home during the day. So then typically if we're unable to reach them, we'll follow up with documentation and a letter mailed to the property owner. And like I said, depending on the situation, we do have the door hangers for the tall grass and maybe parking violations as only it relates to commercial vehicles that could be in a lot that they're not supposed to be in. So anything parking related that's on a city street, we let the CSO and the police department handle, and we kind of work together with them on that. But if it gets on a rental property or on a business, is when we'll work with that property owner to deal with some of those issues, what's going on. And again, just what the code is telling us to do. So if that zone, that tractor trailer isn't supposed to be parked at that business and it's not part of that business, letting them know that it's not supposed to be there. And yes, yep, exactly. And so one of the areas that we've been dealing with down on 11th and McKnight are the semi-tractors and trailers that are in the parking lots down there. And that's been a long, ongoing issue that our inspector has been dealing with, property owners down there and kind of dealing with a lot of issues there. So hopefully, they were supposed to be, again, they gave us a date, basically almost that it was going to be removed and done a month ago, but here we are, and it's still not done. So again, we have to spend a little more extra time in digging in and finding out what's going on and trying to get a resolution. Time to correct the issues. Again, it kind of depends on the violation. Some violations may be able to be corrected immediately and could be correct the same day, such as those garbage cans left on the street or somebody blowing leaves into the street. We get that all the time, and we try to correct that, the same day or when they're out there and have them blow it back into the yard because it doesn't matter which tree they came off of, whether it's a city boulevard tree or within their yard, but If it fell in the street and it's there for us to clean up, doesn't mean everybody can blow everything in their front yard out in the street for the Public Works to clean up. So those are some of those issues that could be dealt with immediately. Some others that require immediate attention, but need to be given a practical time to remove in case of abatement if we need to do it. Again, bags of garbage, the snow and ice, and tall grass and weeds. So I'm definitely on the garbage issue is the number one thing, that there's no messing around. We're not waiting any longer. We notify them, and if they don't get it taken care of within the time frame that we've notified them, then that exact following day, we're out there with the help of Public Works, if needed, to remove garbage and debris and abate it and assess it back to the property owner. And we have to do that, and that's okay. And thankfully, this year on the snow and ice removal, we didn't have as many issues as it relates with single family. We had issues, and when we asked them to resolve it, typically they did. We had more issues this year with commercial properties, and even after notifying them multiple times, they still didn't get it done. So at that point, again, we're abating it. So I'm having Public Works go out with the tool cat and the snow blower and going down the sidewalk and spraying it or clearing it off, and we're sending an invoice to that company for the abatement of the snow. And we had to do that a couple times this past winter. And granted, most of these places know better, and I just don't know why they didn't get the message through, but it was done nonetheless. So some of the violations that may extend longer timeframes to complete, they could be 10 to 15 days or 15 to 30 days. Some of those exterior property maintenance issues. So if we identify that a siding or inoperable vehicle, unapproved driveway, parking on an unapproved driveway, we'll let them know. A lot of this obviously can't be completed within a short period of time and could pose financial difficulty. So we just try to work with them and keep it open and communicate with them, have them communicate with us and let us know what their plans are, and try to get the issue resolved. One of the biggest things that we have as a problem in the city as it relates to driveways are the older homes with the smaller lots and the single car detached driveway. And they're just not designed to have a family of 4 or 5 people and everybody have a car. And nobody wants to move a car in the wintertime, so they end up, parking in the front yard or in other places, and then it begins this issue of the parking issue. So they're not on the street, which is, a good thing for plowing because we can get it plowed, but then they're also yelling at us, why don't you let us park on the street? We wouldn't park in the yard if we could park on the street. And so it's a battle on some of these issues. We try to offer them, some help in the way of identifying how they can resolve that issue. Maybe there's a way for them to add on to their driveway. Maybe they have space. I'm not sure, but we have to look at that with them. But then again, it gets back to the financial aspect. So we give them more time to deal with that issue. So those are difficult ones to solve immediately.
Well, with winter especially, how do you handle those situations? If it's a single family, I mean, again, there's nowhere to park. You can't park downtown. So to which extent are you waiving the fact that there's nowhere they can park and they park in their side yard? I mean, at what point you
Typically-
can't tell somebody they can't have a car?
Right. So typically in that situation in the wintertime, basically we're letting them know that that's a violation, and that will allow it in the essence of, because it's not going to be able to be resolved in the winter either if they are looking to add on to their driveway, but we let them know. And, for them to look at it over the next 6 months or summertime and see if there's something that they can do for it. But in the immediate of the winter, yeah, we're basically just notifying them, making that note in OpenGov where that's been done, and try to follow up with them at a later date and see what, if they're making plans. And sometimes, they're able to figure things out with vehicles, but sometimes they're not. And it's a continual cycle for some. So there's no good solution. There really isn't.
I mean, as a community member and looking out for the community, if you say you can't afford it, I can't afford a brand new garage, I can't afford a brand new driveway. The affordability of living in the city is here, but if you're going to continue citations, at what point?
But so that's, we don't, we wouldn't do a citation in that situation. So we do a notification that it's a violation. So, hey, this is our code. You're in violation of our code. And we would have that conversation with them. So typically if it's face-to-face, or having them call us once they received a letter and they're like, hey, got your letter, but what do you want me to do? I have nowhere to park. And we'll have that conversation with them, be like, okay, we understand that's going on this winter for you. We just want you to be aware of it and see what you can do in the next year or by next winter, if there's something you can do. Can you improve on making your driveway larger, or is there something you can do? So we don't go to citations in that situation. The only time we've issued citations for parking in the yard have been when they've had the ability to park elsewhere and they don't. So I'm not going to give somebody a citation in that instance. Yeah. And to be honest, citations are basically the last thing that we go to. We're trying to work with the people, the property owners, to get things resolved. It's only when it's extremely severe and they're not working with us and there is no other way around it that we go to a citation. Yeah. And even at that point, once we go to that legal option, the citation, the reason I don't like to necessarily go through it is because it's also a long process. It's not going to give us a resolution immediately. So just because I do a citation, it's different than getting that fine for speeding. We're looking for a resolution. We're looking for something that to be changed and fixed. And so we're waiting. And this past couple years from COVID on, it's been extremely difficult to get these types of issues into the court system, and then also get a judge to basically support what we're doing. A lot of time, it may be dismissed, and then we move on and we have to start the process over again. Or the judge may simply tell them, you're on probation for a year, don't do this anymore. So then if they don't do it for a year, that's great, but generally after a year, then things start up again and we go back to the beginning. Yeah. So to me, code compliance is more about trying to work with the property owner and figure out a resolution. One, if there's a violation, obviously garbage, some of these issues that need to be addressed, figure out if they have the resources to do it or not, help them out, guide them. If it's something more severe, is only when we're going down the road of citation.
I can wait. Along those lines, I was just kind of wondering, if it is about behavior change and getting to yes and, compliance, about how often is it related to lack of resources?
I would say when it gets to the severe point, it's because it's lack of resources. So some of the cases that we have going on that have gone to that extent, I mean, one of them most recently, a couple of weeks ago, after the judge ordered them to clean their property, I mean, it was so, there's so much on their property and they don't have the resources and the capabilities to do any of this. And the unfortunate thing is, in the middle of winter, we finally get a resolution from a judge ordering them to clean it up. But to me, that's also not favorable because it's the middle of winter and it's the third snowiest ones. So it's going to create some challenges. So we gave them some extra time, but the attorneys wanted us to make sure we were also showing the court that we're serious about getting this cleaned up. So the order also granted us access to go in and clean up the property if it wasn't done. So basically, it was well over, it was almost a month over, so they had a month and a half to clean it up before we came in and did it. And we spent a couple of hours out there with fire staff and code compliance staff and public works staff and even police. And we also got assistance from Ramsey County Crisis involved to help provide resources to them, which the county has a plethora of, and they refused everything. So those things are difficult. So we did what we could that day. Unfortunately, it's not everything, and we're going to have to potentially go back there in another month if or when the snow melts. But usually it's when it's severe and they don't have the resources. But in the severe ones, we have the option of looking for help other ways, and that's through the county, and they are there for us. But the property owner has to accept that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I can say this, I'm always looking at things throughout the city, and just like it's been a rough winter with snow and how things have been, I know we're gonna have our hands full with some property issues out there this year, so. Yeah.
Chief Manager, thank you very much for thoughtfully walking us through this. And it's great to know that the fire inspection piece is top priority. Our phone rings on the code compliance side. So
Right.
thank you for walking us through that. And this was one of my topics that I wanted to talk through, through a workshop and figure out ways that, whether it be as a city or a council, we can help you get that educational piece out to the residents, whether it be code compliance corner on the Wednesday newsletter that goes out, and we pick a topic.
Yeah.
And you do something every other week or whatever.
That's a great idea. It really is, because it's information getting out there. And we need property owners to take pride in their yards, and I believe it can be, when I'm taking care of mine, then hopefully my neighbor sees that and wants to take care of his, and vice versa. So when something starts going downhill, I think that has an effect too. So, yeah.
And just as a quick follow-up, my other question is, as a percentage of the code compliance, can I call them complaints that come in, how many of them are residents that have, as a percentage, residents that have called in, or how many have been identified by staff? 50-50?
I would say the majority of them are the complaints that come in are by residents.
Okay.
And the other piece of this as well, no resident wants to complain on their neighbor and have their neighbor know about it.
Right.
So
Are they
they're,
kept confidential?
yes, yes. However, that's difficult to be when I'm coming out to your property and then something may be on the side of your house. That's a violation that's clearly affecting somebody else, but we're not giving names of complainants and where it came in. It's merely addressing the violation as it is. Yeah.
Thank you. It's not a fun task.
No, it's not, and that's, with the part-time posting we have right now, I'm hoping somebody within the department will want to pick it up and do it, but exactly it's not necessarily something everybody wants to do, so we'll come across that bridge. We'll see what happens in a couple weeks.
Very important. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that because, like you said, if it starts, then if something gets away, then it kind of works its way, domino effect. So
Yep.
I appreciate that. Anything else from anybody? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time on that. And thanks again.
No problem. And again, if you have any questions, complaints, or concerns in the future on any of this or resident concerns, just send them my way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So moved.
So move.
Second.
Wrong. Second by Councilmember Swear. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All right. Anybody wants to take a couple seconds to
John,
grab a break?
what does the front red button in front of you do?
That drops me through the floor and sends me out the back of the building in case of emergency.
So, does the Get Smart theme song play if
Exactly,
you
yep.
press it?
I'll lay in the parking lot till somebody picks me up.
Yeah, no problem.
Get all microphones off.
That's second half of it.
I like my way better though.
It is.
That'd be more fun.
Yes.
Have the right person. And